Welcome back to the David Pakman Show.
Welcome to the bonus show.
Yes.
I got a story here about some ideas from an artist, a Dutch artist slash designer slash architect named Dan or maybe Don Roosgaard. And there's some pretty good ideas here. Some of them not so good. Some of these ideas include clothing that turns translucent when you're turned on. That to me is not great. But there is a good idea here, and that is replacing lights with bioluminescent plants, perhaps street lights with bioluminescent trees. And that may sound ridiculous, but I believe that people who work in this field have already made, I think, a goat basically bioluminescent, or at least glow in the dark. I think they did it with a cat too. So it's a step in the right direction. But of course, you are messing with things genetically when trying to do this, taking the bioluminescence from things like jellyfish, fireflies, stuff like that, and of course trying to replicate it in plants and other things. Have you heard of this stuff?
I have heard about it. I think it's very, very cool. I would be less concerned about doing it in plants, obviously, than in animals. Certainly, I wouldn't want to eat any of the animals that this was done to, but I think it is very cool, and I'm all up for this type of thing.
Yeah, it seems like a very promising way to go green, excuse the pun, but it's got potential. And I wonder eventually what we can do with this. If maybe one day, instead of just lights powered with alternative energy, that we don't really need power at all, maybe we can just, I don't know, somehow enhance what we know about bioluminescence and just use that. I mean, a lot of this stuff is just glows when it interacts with air. And I mean, if that's all you need, it seems like it's got some potential.
Yeah, I mean, why not just have an entire wall that is painted of bioluminescent paint, and you don't need any lights? Just when it gets dark, the walls are slightly lit up. Controlling it might be tough, though.
That's the thing, yeah. But at the same time, maybe it's not feasible. Maybe it just doesn't produce enough light. Maybe it's not powerful enough. But at least it could be supplementary, if anything. So that's a pretty cool idea. Something else here that is kind of thinking outside the box is basically new types of planetary landers, kind of like the rover, except the rover, the Mars rover, for example, has one chance at landing properly and is prone to any number of disasters that could prevent it from working properly, prevent it from working altogether. So NASA, I guess, came up with the idea of developing basically a flat blanket-sized device that you could drop tens or hundreds of on the surface of a planet, just in different areas, and for probably a lot less money. And I don't know, it'd be a lot safer, of course. You could still figure out what is going on the surface of a planet and do your research. Some of the ideas for these things, even maybe you could have one that actually rolls up into a ball and then is blown by the wind on the surface of the planet and things like that. And I'm thinking that this is a pretty brilliant idea, considering even though we've had great success with rovers, they are very expensive and could potentially fail.
Yeah,
easily,
I've
right?
always wondered about the lack of redundancy of a lot of the space program stuff. And I understand when you're just starting to do certain things, there may only be one way to do it. And it's a way that if it goes wrong, you kind of have to go back to the drawing board. But it is very risky, like Lewis said, to have a mission that depends on, first of all, a really long trip going well, and then the successful and safe arrival on some other kind of celestial body. there's a lack of redundancy there. If there's a bad landing, the everything has just now, I mean, it hasn't been wasted. Presumably you've learned, and of course that's valuable, but you can't do anything further. So I think that this is a really great idea. It's always seemed so risky the way that these explorer devices and craft work and land. I think this is great.
Yep. And so the landers, I guess, would beam up their data to in either aircraft that flies by or something in orbit, which would then relay the information back to Earth. It seems like a pretty good idea, and it seems like could be a lot cheaper. I don't know. We shall see. But like I said, we have had success with rovers. But hey, whatever. We're not the experts here, are we?
No, I still do think, though, if and when there is that moment of first contact with some kind of alien race, I just can't imagine what things are going to be like on this planet. I mean, does anything matter anymore once you've made contact with an alien race? Would anyone just sit around and say, I think I'm going to watch How I Met Your Mother finale again because I'm really curious about that. I mean, it just seems like if and when that happens, it is going to upend life on Earth as we know it, is it not?
I would imagine so. It's funny in Star Trek, when the humans make first contact, basically first the humans find a way to move at or faster than the speed of light, warp speed, warp travel, right? And then aliens notice, and then they make first contact with the humans. And then according to that mythos, basically humans just start working together. Money kind of becomes obsolete, and it just completely changes the world. But I don't know. That's maybe a bit...
It may be a bit idealistic, but I do understand, like, okay, even if you're a right-wing nut who hates gay people, once we find aliens on another planet, do you really care if those two guys that live next door get what within the United States on one planet in one solar system is called a marriage? I mean, I think it would put so many things into perspective.
I think it would. I think it would for a lot of people.
Not to say we don't have things now that should do that. Like when you see all these children that are dying from hunger all over the world, the same thing should come to your mind. Why do I care about the two women that are adopting a kid, right? It should already be happening.
Just imagine, I mean, thinking about it, all the religious fundamentalists that when we first receive news of this, will just call it a hoax.
Right.
And take up arms like never before, literally and metaphorically. Anyway, I hope it happens in my lifetime. There's some video here of a Syrian jet firing at a cameraman and the people that are around him. And there's really not much to this other than that. But when I saw this, it made me realize that people have pretty much just stopped talking about Syria, including the media, including us. Have we not?
We basically have, yeah. And what do you attribute this to?
I don't know. I guess it's just kind of fizzled. I mean, there's still incredible violence going on there.
Oh, I think you know what happened though, Lewis. From an American media perspective, I was recently in France, as people know, on TV there. So if you put on BBC or local French news, there was still discussion of Syria. Once the idea of U.S. military involvement was more or less put to rest, at least temporarily, people just kind of stopped caring in the U.S. Now, I don't know for sure whether our audience does or doesn't care about what goes on in Syria if there is no potential right now or decreased potential for American military involvement. But for the most part, the Syria crisis became indistinguishable from countless others once the U.S. wasn't thinking of going there. And I think that that's what changed the media coverage around it.
Yeah, unfortunately, I think so. And of course, then you've got other things that come up. Russia, Ukraine, Crimea, you've got this Malaysian plane. And it's so strange to me that there is more talk that is just pure speculation and hearsay and what have you on this one flight, and that's all there is. But there's basically a war going on in Syria with atrocities being committed every day, and there's no talk of it. But well, like I said, we're guilty of it too. It's just the way of the world. It's just the curl of the burl, you know?
I would be open to hearing from our audience, though. Would you be interested in our continued coverage of Syria in spite of the fact that the specific involvement of the U.S. seems to have settled down? Or are you also okay with us covering other stories? I'd be open to hearing what our audience thinks.
Right. It's not unreasonable to, I mean, obviously everyone in our audience knows that there is something happening there. We've talked about it. They know what's going on. We know what's going on. There haven't been any really new developments per se, but things are happening that we do need to talk about, and they keep coming up. So maybe, I don't know, maybe we leave it at that. But anyway, we'd like to hear what you have to say about it.
So today is Lewis's last pre-vacation show. We've recorded 2 programs today, the Wednesday and the Thursday program. Tomorrow, Thursday, I will be recording Monday's program on my own. Tuesday, we're not totally sure what's going on yet. And then Wednesday, Thursday, and the following Monday, it'll be just me. And Lewis will rejoin us on Tuesday, April, is it the 14th or the 15th, right?
Let's see, the 15th. Yes. 15th.
Right. So over the weekend, I'll actually also be up in Massachusetts, which is one of the reasons that I will be, we're shifting around our production schedule. Just kind of made sense to get all of this over with at the same time. There's no time warp. The show hasn't been canceled. All of the stuff I always like to say when there's anything different, because people understandably get worried that something has happened to the program, but nothing unusual, just a little pre-planning, shifting things around, and then a lot of new shows coming up, and Lewis will then join us once again. Lewis, are you going to be going through the porno scanner or getting a pat down tomorrow if presented with the option?
You know, I think I'm going to go with the pat down.
Yeah.
Depending on how, time-wise, how I'm looking. I tend to just go with the pat down.
The last time, I've never gone through the porno scanner. The last time I opted out, the TSA people now seem annoyed at having to do pat downs. The guy says, we do a full pat down, including checking of sensitive areas, kind of like saying, you don't want to do this, just go through this thing. And I said, I'm okay. I think I'll wait for the pat down. But I've now had 2 or 3 TSA agents who said, I don't blame you for not going through that. I've read the stuff about how ineffective it is, and it just seems unclear whether there is any long-term damage or not in terms of radiation. And I always get people who email me and they say, it's like standing in a room with a microwave for 5 seconds. I don't care. I just don't want anything to do with it. I know that we've seen the reports from TSA agents about people sitting in back rooms where they are giggling and laughing at what people look like under their clothes. I just don't want anything to do with it. Give me the pat down. I'll stand there. We'll both pretend that we feel like we've kept everybody safe, and then I'll get on my flight. Yeah.
I have to imagine most of these agents, don't want to touch your junk as much as you don't want them to touch your junk. But we just don't know enough about these scanners. Obviously, it's in the best interest of everyone else involved to make us think that, of course, they're perfectly fine and safe and all that. But whatever. I'll go with the pat down, most likely. And if there are any crazy stories about it, you'll be sure to hear about it from me directly.
The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.